Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. I'm currently in Los Angeles, and I want to get into a very controversial issue that, of course, a lot of people in the alternative media shy away from. And that, of course, is what's happening right now with Israel. And that's why in this video, we're going to give you very important updates with what's happening with Israel and the powder keg situation unfolding right now in the Middle East. Now, just a few moments ago, we found out that U.S. officials are saying on record that Israel is preparing for an open warfare with Iran. Now, of course, Israel is doing this seeking full support from the United States, since Israel and even the former Israeli Prime Minister came out publicly and said that they would not be successful in attacking Iran alone. And of course, the United States already gives billions of dollars to Israel and their defense, and see Iran as a common enemy, especially since just recently, Iran decided to drop the US dollar in foreign trade in favor of the euro, which is the same thing that the Iraqi government did 18 years ago before the United States invaded them. And it's a similar move that Muammar Gaddafi of Libya made that ended up getting his country bombed, with him getting overthrown and tortured in the middle of the streets. And even though this hasn't been really highlighted by the mainstream media or really the alternative media, people need to understand this conflict has already begun and is unfolding right now in Syria. Like we saw a few days ago, where a megaton bomb exploded in Hama, Syria, that today U.S. officials have confirmed came from an Israeli airstrike, killed 24 Iranian soldiers, and measured over 2 on the Richter scale, causing a mini earthquake, showing horrifying images of this mass explosion happening on a military base that the world needs to realize is directly engaging with ISIS, which still has a large pocket of resistance in Hama, Syria, which as a result of these bombings is going to directly support ISIS and other radical Islamic terrorists in the region, where the forces who are opposing them are actually being bombed by Israel. And people need to realize the severity of these actions and the consequences of them, since of course this will only embolden more radical Islamic terrorism and help fortify not only their positions, but also their existence, which of course the West has been dealing with an onslaught and expansion of terrorist attacks that have been happening all throughout the West. Now, the prospects for peace between Iran and Israel and even the world with the consequences of this are very bleak, with Israel even voting today to give Prime Minister Netanyahu the power to wage war without even a cabinet vote. Previously, the Prime Minister would need approval from the entire Israeli cabinet in order to declare war, and now Netanyahu can now declare war with only the approval of the defense minister as of today. And Netanyahu is definitely pulling out all of the stops, even a PowerPoint presentation, which he specifically delivered in English in order to get the message out to the United States, saying that he had, quote, conclusive proof that Iran was violating the terms of the Iran nuclear deal, stating that Israel had obtained tens of thousands of files a few weeks ago in a great intelligent achievement, and that Iran was blatantly lying about the nuclear program's existence to the international community, which the Iranian foreign minister responded to, saying that they were lies aimed at deceiving people. But also, many people in the international community are criticizing Netanyahu's PowerPoint presentation because they're saying there was nothing new presented and there was no evidence shown or already known from the International Atomic Energy Agency report that came out in 2015. Now, just for full transparency and the fact that you should be doing your own research, in the sources of this video, which will be on our Steemit post, I will be linking the AIEA statement as well as the full primetime address of Netanyahu and his PowerPoint presentation, so you can make up your own mind. Now, of course, since these presentations bring us closer to war, there's a lot of skepticism here, especially against Netanyahu, which people are saying is trying to manipulate facts to kill the Iran nuclear deal and drag us into another war. European Union politicians are saying that if Iran lied, this is exactly why the Iranian nuclear deal matters, and of course would work actively to prevent Iran from lying. And honestly, it is very hard to believe a man who previously came to the US Senate and said this right before the United States invaded Iraq.
There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. And there is no question that once he acquires it, history shifts immediately.
which came out afterwards was an utter and complete lie sold to us not only by Netanyahu, but also Tony Blair and George W. Bush. That, of course, didn't have solid evidence, had ulterior motives, and have led to what people call the worst foreign policy decision ever made by the United States. But don't forget, Netanyahu, in this fever war pitch for Iraq, also said this:
if you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. And I think that people sitting right next door in Iran, young people, and many others will say, the time of such regimes, of such despots, is gone. There is a new age. Something new is happening.
And in response to the Iraq war, we got massive sectarian violence, the rise of ISIS and other radical Islamic terrorist groups, along with the suffering of millions of human beings and the deaths of countless innocent human beings. And I think everyone really understands right now that the Iraq war was a horrendous decision to make by the United States that has severe ramifications that are still reverberated negatively all throughout the entire world. So when it comes to this man trying to get the United States involved in another war, there should be a lot of skepticism. And with emboldened actions in Palestine and in Syria recently, I believe it is fair for people like Pat Buchanan to criticize Netanyahu, saying that, quote, he's been crying wolf for decades about Iran. Some say that this fever pitch for more conflict is matched with Netanyahu facing corruption charges inside of Israel, which an Israeli judge connected to Netanyahu was just convicted and found guilty of ethics violations in a corruption probe that involves Netanyahu, which potentially could be an explanation for some of this aggressive behavior. But we're playing with a very dangerous situation here, since Israel is also known to have nuclear weapons. Now, of course, these geopolitical moves have put Iran in a very difficult position, especially inside of Syria, with Iranian officials mainly just speaking out, telling Israel to leave Syria alone, which of course we know Israel will not stop doing as long as there's an Iranian presence in Syria right on their border. And it's mainly just tough talk that we're seeing from the Iranians in response to the bombs that Israel is dropping on their soldiers, with Iran and their defense minister saying today that Israel must stop their dangerous behavior or the response will surprise them. Now, it also should be noted in the last 2 weeks that Iran has been increasing its military cargo flights to Syria, stocking up, of course, on more munitions and weapons for the war that is to come. But more and more looks inevitable, as already there are bombs flying on these two direct government forces that have been trying to fight each other for years now. Now, the reason Russia, Iran, and Syria haven't responded to these military runs by Israel is because if they did, they would be drawn to a bigger conflict when already they are winning a conflict within the Syrian territory against the rebels, which years ago, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States were actively financing. And as we're seeing now, when ISIS is defeated, those weapons were directly going into the hands of radical Islamic terrorists. At the same time, Iran is building up their payloads. Israel is also preparing for this possible attack to happen, and of course would involve some kind of involvement from the United States, which of course is supporting Israel with their decision, along with the French soldiers now, to keep their troops in northeast Syria. With ISIS virtually defeated, there is no key geopolitical strategy or point for the United States to be in that region unless they're primarily doing so in order to benefit Israel and Saudi Arabia in the region. Because there's really no other reason why thousands of US troops should be inside of Syria right now, especially with their PR explanation for being so, with there being ISIS in that country, which is ultimately just getting Air Force support by them anyway when they attack people who they're fighting against. So in the next few days, we are going to get a decision by US President Donald Trump on the Iran nuclear deal, which in my opinion, he will oppose and therefore create worse tensions between Iran, Israel, and the United States, and only engulf this conflict with more tensions between all of these countries. And sadly, won't just involve those countries, but other countries like Saudi Arabia that of course are backing Israel and the United States, going up of course against Iran, which is allied with Syria, Hezbollah, China, and of course also Russia. which of course has an all-time low in diplomatic relations with the United States right now, and has been sending their military equipment to Syria in order to fortify that country and to have victory against the rebel groups and ISIS. And of course, even defensive systems that could be used against Israel. And overall, this is just horrible news for everyone, the Israeli people, the Syrian people, the Iranian people, because as these hard-headed, egotistical people launch us into more conflict and bloody wars with each other, we have to understand that ultimately there is no winner from any war. Everyone loses something, especially when they're just following orders, listening to people who are not actually involved in the physical fighting, which of course doesn't benefit anyone except for the military-industrial complex, as we're seeing already trillions of dollars in U.S. tax money just fully missing from the U.S. Pentagon. And as the United States only indebts itself more because of the military-industrial complex, with the crony capitalism that's going on, already 1/3 of American households have struggled to afford either food, shelter, or even medical care. And these realities are only worsened more by governments, which of course don't really give a damn about you and will send you off to war or Syria, not even for the benefit of your own country. Now, I hate to say I told you so, but we've been calling this very complicated situation for years now, especially within Iran and Israel butting heads with each other. Years ago, saying that this conflict was inevitable. And from my understanding, it's only a matter of time until it actually happens, which of course I hope I'm very wrong about, but don't see any other conclusion to this conflict and this rivalry that has been happening for decades. But what do you see? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm looking forward to what you guys have to say on this issue. If you think I'm wrong, please tell me why. All the sources will be in the Steemit post of this video, so you can actually do your own research and make up your own mind. Don't expect these issues and topics to be shown to you, since we know the big social media giants openly suppress and censor a lot of these issues and topics, especially when it comes to covering a global issue from an anti-war perspective, which of course the mainstream media doesn't do, and a lot of independent media doesn't do, especially when it comes to the topic of Israel for some reason. But there should be no reason not to discuss this issue in a logical, evidence-based way that just gives you a picture of exactly what's happening in this world, which you deserve, but yet again is censored from you. So keep that in mind, especially when it comes to investing and supporting in independent media. Because again, if it wasn't for your support and your donations, I would not be able to do what I'm doing right now. And it's only because of you that I am. And that's why I love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more here on youtube.com/WeAreChange.